Today, we're going to be talking about simplifying radicals. One of the easiest ways to simplify radicals is by knowing your perfect squares. So take a minute and fill in what all these perfect squares would be. So 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, all the way up to 20 squared. Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, let's check your answers. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, 196, 225, 256, 289, 324, 361, and 400. So our first two are a little bit easier. In number 1, if we wanted to take the square root of 49, 49 is on our list as a perfect square. It's 7 squared, which means the square root of 49 is just 7. Similarly, 121 is also on our list of perfect squares. 121 is 11 squared, therefore the square root of 121 is 11. Now, in these ones, in 3 through 6, we don't have perfect squares. 28 is nowhere on our list of perfect squares. So what we want to do is figure out which of these perfect squares does divide evenly into 28. Since 28 is in between 25 and 26, we'll only be worried about those perfect squares because these are bigger than our number, so that it won't divide evenly. So 28, which of these is the biggest number that divides evenly into 28? It would be 4, because 28 is 4 times 7, which means it's the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 7 is a decimal, so we're just going to leave it as square root of 7. So the square root of 28 simplifies to 2 square roots of 7. If we want to simplify the square root of 54, we're going to look. 54 is between 49 and 64, so we're going to try dividing it by 49, 36, 25, 16, 9, 4, and see what the biggest one that divides into 54 is. So if you divide 54 by 49, 36, 25, or 16, you get decimals each time. If you divide by 9, you get 6. So it's the square root of 9 times the square root of 6. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 6 is a decimal, and there's no perfect squares that divide into 6. So we leave it as 3 square roots of 6. What's the biggest perfect square that divides into 72? Since 72 is between 64 and 81, we know it's something 64 or lower. Did you pick 36? Because if so, you'd be correct. The square root of 72 is the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. The square root of 36 is 6. Square root of 2 is a decimal, so we'll just leave it square root of 2. Now, a lot of students with the square root of 72 want to use 9 and 8 and say it's 3 square roots of 8. That's not all the way simplified because 8 is still divisible by 4. So you still have the 3 outside. The square root of 4 is 2. Still have the square root of 2. And 3 times 2 is 6. So you can do it if you don't use the biggest perfect square, but by using the biggest perfect square, it's less work. Take a minute and figure out what the largest perfect square that divides into the square root of the square root of 384. The biggest perfect square that goes into 384 is 64, and it is 64 times 6. The square root of 64 is 8, and then we'll keep the square root of 6. That's all for today. See you in class.